Well, alright then. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't excited about this one. And as proof of that fact, I am still nursing the hangover that is a byproduct of this here game. Welcome everyone to another exciting installment, at least I hope this one's exciting, installment of the Jimmy Boy Hour. I'm Omarcomin, and we've got a hotly, wetly anticipated match between the Bogan Lord Youngseward himself and Omarcomin, both generals bringing the battle lines to the table. If you haven't been following the thread on the Ninth Age forums in which the exploits of my battle line have been discussed and presented, I encourage you to do so. Youngseward's been following, and I guess has taken it upon himself to try his hand at this play style. So this is his attempt to answer the mighty dwarven battle line. He's coming with Sylvan Elves, and quite a scary list, actually. Let's run it down here real quick, what he's got. So I think he's got 15 spears out west. We'll start from the left, of course. 15 spears. Looks like, I don't know, is that 11 or so blade dancers with the grudge. Another 15 spears on the wall. You've got another 11 blade dancers on the hill. That's 21 rangers. I don't know, it looks like 17 or something, 18, maybe slightly more, of the elf glade guard guys with, I think these guys all have the sylvan blades, so it's like 17 or 18 there, and then basically just replicate, so 18 blades, 21 rangers, 18 blades, 21 rangers, 18 blades, 21 rangers. Then in the backfield there, he's got a set of 10 or so, I think, of the Sylvan Blade. Or no, those are Rangers as well. So another 10 Rangers with his General and his other Wizard in it. So he's got 2 Wizards, one of Cosmology and one of Shamanism. And then finally we wrap up with another 15 Spears. I'm actually running a slightly different list. This is the list that I've entered into the Crippling Rides tournament. This is an iteration on the existing battle line list, but I've swapped out several of the paired weapon warriors units for great weapons, so 15-man unit great weapon warrior units. I think the reasoning for that is that often in those small skirmishes with my warrior darts, I would be pretty close to winning combat. They would. I mean, they're very good on the charge with 15 attacks at strength 4. That's pretty substantial. But in grinds and in extended combats, when they drop down to strength 3, they just don't do anything. So you just lose combat through attrition mainly because you're not really doing any damage back. So I think the change to the great weapon warriors, it makes them a pretty substantial threat with 10 strength 6 attacks on the charge, or 10 strength 5 attacks if they get charged. That's pretty scary. So I think they take what was kind of a throwaway element in the list, those 10-man unit of paired weapon warriors, and turn it into a pretty frightening combat element. The only other change is I dropped the whole guardian, so I now have 4 units of Kingsguard. The spears are gone from the core, and that's pretty much it. Everything else is the same. So the same setup for the Rangers, the same setup for the Miners, and just 4 units of 15 Great Weapon Warrior Dwarves and 2 units of Paired Weapon Warrior Dwarves. And the reason I kept those 2 is because you still want kind of a throwaway element, and they actually can be really good against low initiative armies. So if you can charge them and have initiative 2 on the charge against things like zombies or even beastmen, anything initiative 2, they can do pretty good work, and they're great little flankers. And again, you can sort of throw them away, double charge hijinks, all kinds of good stuff. Sorry, not to digress. In the pregame for this, we toyed with the idea of where Seward basically called me a pussy for wanting to swap my cannons for maybe an organ gun or a catapult, given that they have no real viable targets in this game. And he said that was bitch made, and I mean, he's right, so we left him in. So those are cannons, of course. So 500 points on my list is kind of tucked off to the side, not really able to do all that much in this game. So there's that to consider here. But overall, this was super, super fun. It was a really interesting game. A lot of conundrums to try to solve, and I hope you guys enjoy it. This one gets real bloody pretty fast. Only other things to note, we're playing markers here. You'll see they're both in the eastern side of the map. And then he's got his magic forest between the house and the other forest there in the center. So he's got a pretty valuable kind of... I mean, if you're a general and you could choose your field, I think this is the field he would want to choose. So that's not ideal for me. The way I've deployed, he dropped all for his first turn, and I basically have counter-deployed him here. So I've deployed heavily in the east to contest both objectives with a token force to prevent him from turning my flank around that house. So I've got one unit of paired weapon warriors and a unit of Kingsguard over there. And then the rangers who can basically assist on either flank with their shooting, and then the cannons over there sort of supporting that western flank as well. So my plan here, given that he's got those forests that make him reroll ones to wound and basically cause me to kill myself, is really just to let him come to me. I'm in no hurry to fight this army. I think the best thing for me to do is to let my rangers and cannons do a little bit of work to soften him up, and then try to take the fight to him. So that's the plan, and you'll see how it turns out. Let's go to turn 1, Sylvan Elves. What a brutal screenshot. Okay, so very little of note here. He moves up into his forest, no surprise there. Basically shoves up his entire battle line towards mine. If I could offer one bit of advice to Seward that Herm gives me often, it's that your line needs to breathe. So here he's pretty congested across his line. I think he would have been better off deploying in maybe 3 columns instead of sort of 5. I mean, let's call it 4 solid columns. I think he would have been better off being a little bit deeper and not as wide, and that would have given him more room to maneuver, and it also would have given more frontage in that forest. So it was basically forcing me to either fight him in that forest or kind of bring me towards that forest. By being this wide, he's gummed himself up in a number of ways. He can't really wheel any of the guys in those 2 middle columns, and he can't really reposition all that easily. I say this because my own battle line sort of looks the same, but you'll see that I sort of open it up to in my first movement phase. But I think once he gets a little more comfortable with this style, I actually think this list is pretty scary, and he maybe could have given himself more options in subsequent turns by allowing a little bit more breathing room. But that's just a lesson I think you need to learn when playing this style, is that you can't easily reposition those infantry. In magic phase, I don't think this was an interesting magic phase, but essentially he cast the Awaken the Beast on the unit of Blade Dancers that are basically protecting the minor ambush. Now, Seward is a Beast Herds player, for those of you who don't know, first and foremost. So you'll see he's being very fastidious about his protection of the ambush for my miners, perhaps not realizing that only Beast Herds ambush on turn 1, and they won't be here for another turn, but he's making sure that if they do show up, they're going to get a face full of Blade Dancers. So he's got 2 units of Blade Dancers protecting the rear of his battle line, probably a little too much protection. And then he's got this other unit of spears over in the west against that wall, protecting that corner from subsequent miners. But magic, he casts Awaken the Beast on that unit of Blade Dancers. I allow it through, but I use my Rune of Devouring to eat it. That's one of the more frightening spells that he has here in his list. His other spells, just for your edification, are Savage Fury, which he, I think, also got through in this round. Yeah, he got it through on a unit of Glade Guard, just poking in that forest a little bit. So those guys are fearless, have frenzy, etc. And he has, I believe, he's got one spell in Cosmology, and I think that it is Perceptions of Strength. So it's a technically 2 spells, so he's got +1 strength, +1 AP, or the debuff, -1 strength, -1 AP. So not a huge amount of magic on his end, but a good handful of buffs and debuffs. So by eating Awaken the Beast, he's now limited to basically one buff from either school, and then yeah, basically one buff from either school. So he's got Frenzy, Battle Focus, or +1, -1 strength. It's pretty uneventful, and then we'll move on. Let's see what the dwarves are up to. Dwarven Holds, turn 1. No charges here, but we start our slow, methodical advance forward, trying to open up the battle lines, create some charge lanes, etc. So you'll see I moved my Kingsguard out from behind that unit of warriors into the ruins, risking the dangerous terrain march test, and managed to survive or not lose a man, so that was pretty nice. But doing so opens up basically that whole center area. It gives them, viable charges in that whole center, which they wouldn't have had if they had remained behind that unit of warriors, or I guess the 2 units of warriors. So you see the 10-man unit of paired weapon warriors have pushed up pretty aggressively, sort of baiting a charge from him. And in the west, just a little bit of shuffling going on, so posturing for position, essentially. In Magic, I got rerolls to hits on my paired weapon warriors. Now this is, I didn't talk about my own spells, actually. So with this list, essentially what I was thinking with my spell selection, and normally what I take is -1 to hit ×2, so I have -1 to hit on my Anvil, -1 to hit on my Runesmith. I have -1 to wound on my Anvil and Runesmith, and then I usually take Revocation. So those are typically my set of 5 spells. However, with Great Weapon Warriors, my thinking is that because they're weapon skill 4 and they only have 10 attacks, not 15, the margin of error is a lot lower, or I guess it's higher. Yeah, so it's a lot you're far more likely to fluff with just 10 attacks, hitting on 4s typically. So my thinking was that if I want to get the max out of that unit, reroll hits is pretty valuable with this many great weapons. I mean, it's just as useful on the Kingsguard. So I took that instead. In hindsight, probably would have been better to have Gleaming. And that's because elves are such high initiative, and I definitely, I think, underestimated the combat potential of Seward's list here. So I do have that. My spells, obviously, -1 to hit, reroll to hit, I've rerolled a hit, -1 to wound, and Revocation on the Anvil. I have -1 to hit and -1 to wound on the Runesmith. So I get 2 in here. I get rerolls and -1 to hit on the trailing unit of warriors. The paired weapon warriors have rerolls, and the great weapon warriors have -1 to hit. That's Magic and shooting. Pretty good phase here, actually. So in the west, the unit of rangers panicked that unit of spears by killing, I think, 3 or 4, and then the cannon fired and killed, I think, another 3. So we took off a rank from that unit, causing them to fail, I think, a leadership 8. so they ran towards the board edge. And the same thing happened in the east. The Rangers killed 4 of those spear guys. You see them sort of just to the left of the field behind that unit of Rangers. So they fled as well. However, both the the Glade Guard just tucked into that forest a little bit there. They are fearless, and the Rangers are also fearless. So interesting. I mean, that spell had, I guess, a minor effect there, but the Fearless Rangers is a tough nut to crack with shooting of any kind. So that we'll see how that plays out. Let's go to Sylvan Elves next turn. And as usual, I've forgotten to take a picture. So what's missing here is Sylvan Elves turn 2. And I'll try to fill in the blanks as best I can. It was a fairly eventful turn. So this is actually the end of Dwarves turn 2. In the center where those warriors were, he charged forward with his nearest unit of Glade Guards. So they ran directly forward out of the forest into that unit of 10-man warriors. And that was his only charge. Yeah, so he just declared the one charge. So those Glade Guard ran forward into those warriors. And then he sort of shuffled around his battle lines. He rallied both of his spear units. And he starts shifting around elsewhere. In terms of magic, I believe this is the turn he did himself a real mischief. As I stated previously, he had 2 wizards, each had 1 spell, so he threw the Cosmology spell onto that unit of Glade Guard that charged my warriors, and he got it in, but he rolled 3 6s on 5 dice, so I allowed him to have it. That miscast resulted in the instantaneous death of that wizard. So he now has 1 spell, and that spell is just it's like Battle Focus, Frenzy, Fearless spell from the Shaman school. So he's down to just that. So his magic phase is pretty much kaput. However, those Glade Guards do get, I think he took +1 strength, +1 AP on them. So they've got 2 attacks each with AP 3 at strength 4. Or maybe it's AP 2, strength 4. Still pretty good. And they pretty much tear through that paired weapon warrior unit and overrun into, it's kind of hard to see on this picture, but the if you look at the ruins, the Great Weapon Warrior unit that is down 2 bodies nearest to those ruins, that's the unit that they overran into. And that's kind of all of the events of note from his turn. He did shuffle around a bit in his backfield, again with my miners sort of in the back of his mind. In my turn, I countercharged, so I charged the Kingsguard out of the ruins into that unit of Glade Guard, into the front of them. I think I was only able to get 2 Kingsguard in, so he just had the 1 model overhanging on the left side of those Great Weapon Warriors. So we charged the front there, and then on the right side, the other unit of Great Weapon Warriors got into the flank of those Glade Guard guys. In Magic, let's talk a little bit more about movement, actually. So the miners arrived. I put them in the backfield. They're 5 inches from the Rangers to have a stand and shoot against them. And they're, I think, all within short range of the Blade Dancers. So my intention was to pop in, shoot a bunch of bodies off the Blade Dancers who aren't currently threatening a charge. So maybe a lapse in judgment here. I probably would have been better off popping in, shooting the immediate threat, so the Rangers, and then shooting them again on the stand and shoot. That probably would have weakened them sufficiently to win that combat, and then have a charge in my own turn onto something. Whether it's, I mean, charging into Blade Dancers is still suicide, but at least then I tie them up. So they popped in, shot at the Blade Dancers, I think did 1 wound, and are now under threat of a charge from 10 Rangers. Other moves, you'll see, his aggression here in the west. So you see the unit of, those are Glade Guard that are now quite near my Rangers. It is a front charge there, so I'm not super worried about that. My Rangers, again, have parry. And with the stand and shoot, they likely would be steadfast, probably killing a handful on the stand and shoot. So I don't move them a huge amount. I just pivot them slightly so that they have the front charge from those Glade Guard. The Rangers, or the Warriors, paired weapon Warriors out west, are just facing now those Blade Dancers to not allow an overrun into the Kingsguard, and the Kingsguard pivot just to be able to kind of come down from the west through the center of the battlefield if he gets any more aggressive near that house. That's sort of the intention there. You'll see this unit of Great Weapon Warriors in the east is now out in no man's land, facing down those Rangers. The intention there is to either bait a charge and bring him into, basically bring him under the threat of my Kingsguard. So he has to make that choice. If not, I'm going to charge him, which I'm not sure he worries about too much here, but the threat is still there. In combat, obviously, the Kingsguard destroyed the Kingsguard, and the 2 units of Great Weapon Warriors destroyed that unit of Glade Guard. I overran with the Kingsguard. I think I needed an 8 to get into this next unit of Glade Guard, but I rolled, I think, a 4, so they just kind of sit in the middle of the field. But that's fine. In looking at that overrun, there was no potential negative effect of taking it. Everything would have remained in my front. I was already out of the arc of pretty much everything else, so if I made it, it would have been pretty good, I think. I would have been in combat with them during his turn. He wouldn't have really had any supporting charges available to him, and I win that fight easily against his core Glade Guard. But, didn't happen. The other warriors just pivot to threaten counter charges should he come out of his forests. And that's kind of it. In Magic, I got a fair bit through, so I got rerolls to hit on that center unit of warriors. I got -1 to hit, -1 to wound on basically the unit facing the charge, so that's that trailing Great Weapons Warrior unit. Shooting, I don't think I did a whole lot. I think I killed 1 Ranger in the east, and it looks like I killed 3 Glade Guard with my Rangers in the west. My cannons, one of them misfired clearly, and that's going to be that. So let's move on. And now things start to get bloody. Let's go from the west. In the west, the Kingsguard charged into the flank of those Glade Guard, who held. So they got in over there. The Kingsguard in the center charged that unit of Glade Guard that was standing in their face. The miners continue their grind with those Rangers. So in the combat there, that's sort of the only combat that I think we wanted to talk about in the previous turn. As I said, I shot off 3 in my stand and shoot, but 7 Rangers hitting on 3s and wounding on 3s. He managed to do still a very large number of wounds, 4. But I remained steadfast, so that was nice to stick around. And he had positioned his Blade Dancers basically to either I think assuming that the miners would win that combat, I sort of thought they would win it too, 12 to 10, both with paired weapons, or at least 2 attacks each. Me, strength 4, him strength 5. I just thought it would go a bit better. He has the advantage in weapon skill, so yeah, that grind continues. Kingsguard obviously do what they do against core, so in the west they had, in Magic I actually got a fair amount through here, so it looks like I got rerolls to hit on the Kingsguard in the west, and I got -1 to wound on the center Kingsguard. No real viable overruns here, so basically in both cases they just reform. So in the west I reform so that his rangers, when they charge my Kingsguard, won't have an overrun into my rangers, and then in the center I do this weird conga line thing so that my Kingsguard could potentially offer a support charge into the rear of his rangers if they charge my Kingsguard, and so that they're still threatening the center, keeping anything that can charge them in their front. As for other movements, I just start moving up a little bit more aggressively towards the objectives to contest there. So, I win both combats. The miners, they managed to whittle down the rangers to just one guy, so it's currently a 4-to-1 situation there. Kind of probably frustrating for Seward because he's still got those blade dancers, locked into that responsibility, and that grind will continue. Shooting, it looks like I did a bit of work onto the Glade Guard in the bottom and the Glade Guard in the west. It looks like both rangers chipped off a few wounds but didn't cause any panics. I don't think there's anything else of note here. Maybe my cannon did 1 wound onto his rangers. That's kind of cool. I guess the only other thing to note is the Kingsguard in the center, having won that combat, caused the Glade Guard to flee. They flee about 5 inches and are cock blocking most of his charge lanes, so he's not going to be able to do much in the next turn. So that's a nice little turn of events for me, and we'll move on to his turn 4, I think. Might be his turn 5 at this point. Yeah, Sylvan Elf's turn 4. Whole bunch of charges here to talk about. So he declares charges in the west against the Kingsguard with his rangers, and I hold. In the center, he charges his rangers into my Great Weapon Warrior unit. So he charges out of the woods there, and I hold. And then in the far east, he charges, those are also rangers, into my Kingsguard, and I hold. It looks like I had weakened that unit of rangers in the east prior to, so I had done some shooting there at some point and chipped off a few. Oh no, this is end of the turn, so that'll be after combat. That can't be right. I refuse to believe that. Oh, I guess that's right. Okay. A rare fluff here. So here's what happened. In Magic, he got nothing. Obviously, he has no shooting. So in combat, yes. Okay, here's what happened. So he charged both units of rangers. Those are overruns, is what we're looking at. So he had 2 units of rangers, 1 in the forest and 1 near the field. They both charged my chaffing unit of Great Weapon Warriors in the front, and then his overruns bring them into, just as I drew it up, into the Great Weapon Warriors on the left and the Kingsguard on the right. So that unit of Great Weapon Warriors fled, obviously, and were run down, it appears. I don't see them on the table. Yeah, they were run down. One interesting thing to note, actually, and I just remembered this, is that when my Kingsguard in the west killed that unit of Glade Guard, they killed everyone except for, I think, 4 guys. And then when they fled from them, they fled through most of my army. And if you look at my command unit where my BSB is, there is one Glade Guard model between the unit of Great Weapon Warriors and my command unit. That is the remainder of that fleeing unit. So that guy is there kind of fucking up my movement a little bit and just generally being a nuisance and refusing to die. Just something funny. It's not really pertinent to the game, but this is how he ends up though. So he kills that unit of Great Weapon Warriors. I now have counter charges in my turn. In the west, my unit of Kingsguard lose pretty badly to those Rangers. This was a bit of a shock to me, and it was really the first time it was apparent that I was kind of outgunned in this game. So his Rangers, I mean, they're larger units. It's 21 to 15, but both are elite infantry. He's just a little bit more elite, it seems. So they hit on 3s and wound on 3s. I hit on 4s and wound on 2s. But he's much higher initiative. So on the charge, he killed 10, fully 10 of my Kingsguard. And it looks like I killed a good handful back, but lose combat by a fair margin. I think I was rolling double ones here to be able to stick. He fails to run me down. So my Rangers have a nice short range target or a charge target. And I have an interesting choice to make in my turn. Yes, this is how his turn ends up. He reforms those fleeing Glade Guard into annoying conga formation to chaff my Kingsguard in the center. Not much else to talk about. The grind continues with the miners. There's that one Ranger kills 2 miners, and I managed to stick. So, yeah, we'll move on. So in my turn, through a handful of charges here, the Kingsguard in the center charged the conga line of Glade Guards. The Kingsguard in the east support the other unit of Kingsguard that were overrun into. And that's basically it. Now in the west, I had a sort of a conundrum here. I could either have charged the flank of the Rangers and take 4 attacks. I would have had to kill... I think I would have had to kill 4 to break his steadfast, maybe 3, and I would have had 8 attacks, strength 4, hitting on 4s. So it was just a bit too dicey to charge that flank of his Rangers with my Rangers, so I chose instead just to shoot them, and I managed to kill a good few. I killed, I think, 6. Or he might have had slightly fewer. No, yeah, he had... Oh, that's 7 wide. So I actually killed 7 in shooting between the cannons and the Rangers. They're fearless, obviously, but I thought that might have been enough to win subsequent combats. And I'm going to be steadfast with those Rangers anyway. I do rally those Kingsguard in the west, so they're just going to remain facing the way they're facing so that there's no overruns potentially for those Blade Dancers or those Spears. Actually, there could have been. Yeah, there could have been. He could have charged both the Spears and the Blade Dancers and overrun into the flank of my Rangers. Interesting. I hadn't considered that. I wonder if he had. Yeah, so my Kingsguard turned the flank of the Rangers in the east, and that's kind of it. I reposition in the center there so that his other unit of Rangers, should they kill and overrun, they would hit the left unit of Great Weapon Warriors, and then my command unit would have basically a flank charge. I guess in 2 turns time. So I mean, it's wishful thinking, but it is what it is. Magic, I got -1 to wound through on 2 units, so I did get it through on. I think this illustrates the power of these Rangers, actually. So I get -1 to wound through on the Great Weapon Warriors to the left that they're not there any longer. They're actually on the other side of the wall. You see them. There's just 3 of them. So -1 to wound there, and I got -1 to wound through onto my Kingsguard unit. And in both cases, they still took a tremendous number of wounds. So to the left, it looks like there's only 3 left. So there's 15. So they took 12 wounds there, and the other Kingsguard unit looks like took 6 wounds, even with -1 to wound. So pretty spooky unit. So hitting me on 3s, wounding on 4s, pretty nasty. In combat, the Kingsguard in the center failed to kill. I only killed 1. That's crazy, with a whole lot of attacks. Yeah, they would have had 9 attacks there. I can't imagine how that happened. I must have fluffed my hit rolls. Again, to hit on 4s just kind of sucks ass. So I hit them on 4s and only killed 1, so they somehow managed to stick there. In the east, my Great Weapon Warriors, like I said, got demolished by his Rangers. There are 3 left, and they're fleeing. He chooses not to overrun, though. I thought this was a kind of a smart play on his part. So he's now has charges in his turn. So he just pivots in my turn to give himself more charge options or whatever, instead of tying up his unit further by overrunning into that unit of great weapons. And with the Kingsguard combat, I force him to flee away from the eastmost Kingsguard. So he flees towards the field. They pursue. The other unit pivots to face the center. And that's kind of it. Let's move on. I think we're into his turn 5 here. So in his turn 5, his Blade Dancers that were by the house charge into my center Kingsguard. His Blade Dancers way out in the east, or in the west, sorry, they charge my 5-man unit of Kingsguard. His Rangers charge my Rangers. In the east, he tried to charge the flank of my pursuing Kingsguard unit. Which I thought was kind of it was a neat play. I was impressed. I choose to flee and go about 11 straight towards the objective. Very nice. And he redirects into the other unit of Kingsguard that were facing them, so that they have the front. And that's it in combat. Obviously, the 11 Blade Dancers just do straight up murder on my 5 Kingsguard. His other 11 Blade Dancers do the same in the center, and they push through towards my backfield. I think we saw a rare fluff here in the east, where his Rangers only managed to do, it looks like, 3 wounds onto my Kingsguard, and it looks like they take about 4, maybe 4 or 5 in return. So I think I actually won this combat. Did I win that? Yeah, because we both have a rank. He had a charge. He did 3. Yeah, I think I won this combat in the east by 1, but he sticks. So for once, his Rangers didn't absolutely destroy my own elite infantry. And I have a rear charge available to me in my turn. So that's pretty dope. Nothing else of note. But yeah, the Rangers, sorry, my Ranger in the Ranger fight, he kills 1 guy, and I'm steadfast, but they're not going to be long for this world with their shield wall sort of expiring or going to its weaker version, and without having done any wounds in return. Yeah, it's a bit disappointing. We'll move on to my turn 5. So in my turn 5, my unit of Great Weapon Warriors that had the rear charge executed it, so they came to the rescue of the Kingsguard. Something else really of note, I moved my command out of the other unit of Great Weapon Warriors because I'm going to need it to contest the objective. I move my Rangers off of the board edge towards the objective again to be able to contest. In Magic, it looks like I got rerolls to hit in on the Great Weapon Warriors, and I got -1 to wound in on my own Kingsguard. I do rally the Kingsguard by the objective, so that's nice for me. Combat the Rangers, ultimately die to the other Rangers. Oh, they flee. They flee and he gets into my cannon, so that's not great. Shooting, I don't think I did anything of note. I think my cannon misfired. That right-hand cannon there misfired 3 times. So a total piece of shit. I think it does redeem itself, though. Actually, I shouldn't be so disparaging. But in the East, we obviously win that Ranger fight. I force him to flee from my Kingsguard, sending them into the center of the field. All that's left there, you'll see, is his General and 1 Ranger, sort of in the center of the field behind those Glade Guard. So they're sitting there exposed. My Warriors managed to get into his Rangers, which was all part of the plan, to try to gum them up and prevent any further advance onto the objective. My own Kingsguard just pivot. They choose not to pursue. And that's kind of where we leave it. So he's now threatening my backfield with his Blade Dancers, his West Blade Dancers, and his Rangers. And I've got potentially 4 scoring units in range of that second objective. And I'm pretty much in complete control of the other objective marker in the far east at the bottom of the map. So looking pretty good for me right now. We'll go to his turn 6. So his Rangers kill my cannon, no surprise there. His Blade Dancers elect to charge the anvil. He does this weird chaff thing with his Forest Guard. It looks like my Great Weapon Warriors lost handily to his Rangers in the forest. No surprise, I don't think. But I did want to deny him any kind of movement with that Ranger, so I'm still happy with that overrun. It would have been really bad, I guess, had he had a pursuit move, but I was pretty sure they would just die outright, and I expected to take more DTs by running through his forest. I don't think I'd lost any guys, actually, so maybe slightly risky to do that and give him the pursuit, but even so, I think I still would be able to contest the objective with 3 scoring units. So he kills cannon. Doesn't do much else. He really can't do much else. So he kills the cannon, and that's kind of it. Repositions. Doesn't manage to kill my anvil in 1 turn. So that's his turn 6. And in my turn 6, I charge his Glade Guard in the center. I sort of had a bit of a maybe a questionable strategic move here. I thought I could shoot his Glade Guard that are just to the left side of that forest there with my Rangers. So they're on long range there. I thought I could maybe panic them and get their points. So rather than move up with the Rangers to also contest the objective and have 3 scoring to his 1, I just chose to shoot to see if I could get some more points. Didn't work out. I think they only killed 2. So they did panic, actually. But they passed their test, so they stay there. The only other eventful thing is that my cannon, the one that has misfired 3 times this game, took its last shot onto his General and managed to hit him and wound him and kill him, and also kill the 1 Ranger he was remaining with on the penetrating shot. So that was a nice moment of redemption for that 3-time misfiring cannon. And the game pretty much ends like this. This is the end of Dwarves turn 6. I've got 2 units contesting the leftmost objective. He's got 1, so I win that one, and I've got the only unit contesting the easternmost objective, so I also win that one. And victory points, I mean, this list of his is so fucking hard to take points off of that I thought I was much further behind than I ended up being. I think killing the general swung things for me in a big way. But it ended up being something like 2,200. I took 2,200 off of him, and he took about 2,400 off of me, which worked out to an 11-9, but I had won the objective, so it ends up a 12-8 for me. Overall, a super interesting game, and a whole lot of fun. Lots of bloodshed, lots of battles. We were constantly scrapping and jockeying for position. It was really, really fun. A few little surprises. I frankly was really shocked at how badly he outfought me. There's literally nothing in my list that can stop Rangers unless I can combo charge them or get into their flanks or rears. And even in the rears, it's almost to his benefit for me to rear charge him, because he gets his full 2 profile attacks to the rear. So he actually ends up with more attacks when I charge him in the rear, which is fucking... I feel like that's a design oversight. But hey, I feel like getting charged in the rear should be more punishing than it is. Like 2 static combat res is not... Yeah. I mean, it's a fringe case, but it just strikes me as odd that you would have substantially more attacks by gaining the full attacks from those models to the rear when you get rear charged. But anyway, yeah, super bloody game. I was pretty pleased with how I played. I feel like I distracted and tied up a lot of his more threatening units. I definitely think Seward could have used his Blade Dancers better, maybe even running them kind of as shock troops, either in his front line or as part of his front line. I think for Dwarves, advancing under your shitty units works really well, but in his case, it might be better. I guess they're fearless, so they can't really flee. I don't know. He definitely could have used them better, though. I think he had them tied up for too long, and if he had got them out front, I would have been in a whole lot more trouble. But generally, yeah, super bloody, super fun, very dynamic game. Lots of interesting maneuvers and choices to be made. And yeah, we had quite a few cocktails and quite a few laughs, so was happy to finally meet the Bogan Lord himself, all the way from Oz. And yeah, just a few housekeeping things before I sign off here. I am running with the help of Dan from the forums, a Christmas gift exchange for 9th Age forum members. So if you're interested in giving nerd shit and getting nerd shit, it's a fun way to dig through your hobby closet and see, what stuff you have no interest in painting or could get rid of that someone else could enjoy. You can also buy things for people, but overall I think it's just fun to receive a mystery package from someone who gets you on a nerd level, and potentially it's a little bit of a community building effort for the game that so badly needs it. So yeah, look for that on the forums. It should be easy to find. I think it's in the general forum. If you want to sign up, you just click a link and you'll be paired with someone. It's not going to be super expensive, so yeah, the objective is not to burden anyone's pocketbook or anything like that. So you just basically give secondhand stuff from your own hobby closet, or I think we have a $25 limit for gifts if you want to purchase something. Later this week, I have this list. I'm taking, as I said, into Crippling Rides, but I'm also doing still in the Gauntlet. So I have my Gauntlet game on Sunday, which is about 24 hours from now. So I hope to report on that as well. And yeah, things are going pretty good. Right on. We'll talk to you soon. Stay Jimmy, boys.